Imagine building your dream tiny house community, a place where you can finally live freely and escape the chaos of traditional housing. But just as things are starting to come together, disaster strikes. Meet Karen, an overzealous HOA member who is determined to shut us down. No, this isn't a movie, it's happening right now. It all started when we moved in, full of hope and excitement. We had carefully planned every detail, making sure to follow the rules and regulations. But from the moment we arrived, Karen started making her presence known. She wasn't happy about tiny houses, and she wasn't going to let us live in peace. At first, it seemed like typical HOA drama, complaints about property lines, noise, and landscaping. But it quickly escalated. Karen was relentless, using every tool at her disposal to try and force us out. It wasn't just about the rules anymore, it was personal. She even started involving local authorities, claiming our tiny house community was a nuisance. Now, we're fighting back. But will we be able to stand our ground? Or is Karen's power too much to overcome? Stick around to find out what happens next, because things are about to get even more intense. We soon realized Karen wasn't just an ordinary HOA member, she was on a mission. After several meetings where she made it clear that tiny houses didn't fit her vision for the neighborhood, we knew we were in for a long fight. But what shocked us most was how she seemed to know everything about each of us, from where we worked to who visited our homes. It was as if she had been watching us all along, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Things took a darker turn when Karen started showing up unannounced, leaving passive-aggressive notes on our doors, and making calls to local authorities claiming that our homes were unsafe or unsanitary. One day, we found a letter from the city demanding that we remove our tiny houses or face hefty fines. It felt like a direct attack, and we couldn't understand why she was so determined to get rid of us. The more we tried to play by the rules, the more Karen seemed to change the game. We started questioning her motives. Was she really concerned about the neighborhood, or was there something deeper going on? But no matter how much we tried to talk things through, Karen refused to compromise, and the tension kept building. Now, we're at a breaking point. The next move could change everything. But is it too late to save our dream community? As the pressure from Karen grew, so did the cracks in our community. What once felt like a close-knit group, united in our shared vision, now began to splinter. Some residents, worn down by the constant harassment, started questioning whether it was worth the fight. A few were talking about packing up and leaving, not wanting to deal with the legal battles and stress anymore. Others, however, were determined to stand their ground. The tension was palpable. But even among the ones who stayed, doubts started creeping in. Was Karen just a bitter neighbor, or was she backed by something bigger? There were whispers that she might have connections with the local city council, or that she was trying to raise her property value by pushing out the tiny houses. No one could say for sure, but the suspicion lingered. In the meantime, Karen's tactics became more underhanded. She started spreading rumors, telling people that our tiny house community was a fire hazard, that we weren't following health codes, even accusing us of lowering property values for everyone around us. Some neighbors, who had been friendly at first, started keeping their distance. And the worst part, we couldn't shake the feeling that Karen was orchestrating it all with one goal in mind: to see us fail. As the pressure mounted, we knew that something needed to change. But every time we thought we had a solution, it seemed like Karen was one step ahead. How could we protect our homes and our dream when she seemed to have every angle covered? The stakes were getting higher, and with every passing day, it felt like we were running out of time. The tipping point came one hot afternoon when we received a final warning from the city. Our homes were now officially considered illegal structures. The letter threatened immediate eviction unless we complied with a list of expensive and near impossible regulations. The weight of it hit hard, but what made it worse was Karen's smirk when she handed the letter over. It was clear she was enjoying this. She had orchestrated the whole thing, pushing the city to act. It was no longer just about a neighborhood disagreement. It felt like she was out for blood. With the clock ticking, we gathered the remaining residents for an emergency meeting. The air was thick with anxiety, fear, and frustration. Some were talking about getting lawyers involved. Others were discussing whether to comply and tear down their homes. But the more we talked, the more we realized we couldn't just give up. Our tiny house community wasn't just a place to live, it was a symbol of freedom. A chance at something different in a world where the system seemed stacked against people like us. That night, we made a decision. We were going to fight back with everything we had left. But just as we began to plan our next move, something unexpected happened. A car pulled up to one of the tiny houses late at night. A mysterious figure stepped out, someone we hadn't seen before. They didn't knock. They just slipped a letter under the door. And when we opened it, it was clear. This wasn't just Karen playing her games anymore. There was someone else pulling the strings, someone with far more power than we realized. And that's when we knew the stakes were higher than ever. We carefully unfolded the letter, our hands trembling. It wasn't from the city or the HOA. This was different. The handwriting was unfamiliar, and the words sent a chill down my spine. Asterisk, you're not the only ones with a fight on your hands. Meet us at the old mill at dawn. There's more at stake than you realize. Asterisk. What did this mean? Who were these people? We had no idea, but one thing was clear. Things were about to get much more complicated. The next morning, we arrived at the old mill, nervous but desperate for answers. The place was dark and abandoned, a perfect setting for a secret meeting. As we approached, a man stepped out from the shadows. He was older, wearing a business suit, but something about him felt off. His eyes were cold, calculating. He introduced himself as a developer, and with that simple word, everything clicked. You've been a thorn in Karen's side, and she's been trying to shut you down for a reason, he said, his voice steady but with a dangerous edge. You see, your tiny house community. It's standing in the way of a multi-million-dollar project. Karen's been pushing you out so her backers can build luxury condos on this land, and you're just the first obstacle. My heart dropped. This wasn't just some local HOA drama. It was a full-scale corporate scheme to take over the entire area. Karen wasn't acting alone. She was just a pawn in a much bigger game, and now we were caught in the crossfire. The stakes had just risen exponentially. If we didn't act fast, we weren't just fighting to keep our homes, we were fighting to protect the very land beneath them. But how could we win against a powerful developer with endless resources and connections? And what did this stranger want from us? The answers were just out of reach, but the clock was ticking. As we processed the developer's words, the weight of everything began to sink in. We weren't just fighting Karen anymore. We were up against an entire system built to crush us. But we weren't going to let that stop us. We couldn't. This was our home, our dream, and we weren't backing down. The first step was clear: expose the truth. We gathered evidence, documented every conversation with Karen, and connected the dots between her and the shady developer. We went public with everything, contacting local news outlets, and launching a social media campaign to rally support. The more we shared, the more people began to listen. It turned out we weren't the only ones who had been impacted by these corporate developers. Other small communities, families, and local businesses had been quietly pushed out by similar tactics, and they were ready to stand with us. The pressure mounted. The city council, suddenly faced with public outcry, had no choice but to open an investigation into Karen's connections and the developer's plans. But just when we thought the battle was over, Karen made one last desperate move. One morning, as we prepared for what we thought would be a victory meeting, Karen showed up at our doorstep, this time with a contract. But it wasn't just any contract. It was an offer for us to sell our land. For a lot of money. Too much money. Enough to make anyone second-guess everything they'd fought for. I took the paper in my hands, my heart racing. Was this a trap? Or was it finally the chance to end it all, walk away and live a different life? But as I scanned the fine print, something caught my eye. Asterisk in exchange for this offer, The buyer will retain full rights to any future developments on the land. Asterisk. It was the final twist. The money wasn't a way out. It was a way in, a way to control everything we had built, to destroy our community without us ever knowing what happened. We had no choice but to tear up the contract and keep fighting. The final battle was only just beginning. In the end, our fight wasn't just about tiny houses or Karen. It was about standing up for something bigger, our right to live freely and make choices that align with our values. When the truth came to light, it was a turning point. The community rallied behind us, and the city had no choice but to intervene. The developers' plans were halted, and Karen, stripped of her connections, faded into the background. The victory wasn't perfect. Some of us had to make hard decisions, but we kept our homes. We preserved what we had fought for, and as time passed, our tiny house community became a symbol, a testament to the power of resilience, unity, and standing up against corporate greed. We knew the fight would never truly end, but we had proven that ordinary people, when they band together, can make a difference. Looking back, I realized the real lesson wasn't just about winning the battle. It was about the people we met along the way, the relationships we forged, and the hope we found in the most unexpected places. And as we continue to live in our tiny homes, one thing is clear. We've built something far bigger than just houses. We've built a community that will never be torn down.